Think about the deal in your pipeline right now that should have closed. The calls went well, the interest was there, but it hasn't moved. What if that delay wasn't about budget timing or internal approvals, but about certainty? Long sales cycles aren't caused by resistance, they're caused by hesitation. In a few minutes, I'll show you the exact moment that most B2B deals stall, and why pushing harder at that point quietly delays the close. If you're running a B2B business or a sales team with a full pipeline, but deals keep dragging, decisions feel slow, and momentum is hard to maintain, then this episode is for you. Most people watching aren't actually subscribed, and you'll miss the episode that will actually move the needle. By the end of this episode, you'll understand why deals slow down and how to move them forward without chasing, discounting, or forcing urgency. Welcome back for episode 49.
So let's talk about why deals actually stall and the illusion of a healthy pipeline. So generally, CRM activity creates comfort, but progress creates revenue. That's why a lot of pipelines seem to stall. They think that activity, although that is creating that comfort, if you like, it's not actually creating the revenue when those deals have stalled. Now, a pipeline can look full, busy, and promising without anything actually moving closer to a decision.
Yeah.
This is why busy pipelines can feel misleading, right? Because there's a high number of open deals that makes the C-suite feel reassured. And it looks like there's momentum. There's loads of deals in the pipeline. We've got a big pipeline. Life's good. We're going to have a great Christmas party this year.
Yeah, you start to get excited and you think, oh, this client's going to generate us this much, this client's going to generate us this much, or, this is an extra 100K, whatever it is. And you start to get really happy before anything's, signed and sealed and delivered.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And they'll generally see loads of activities around, calls, emails, meetings being created, and that creates the illusion of progress. Because again, activity creates the comfort. It's progress that creates the revenue.
Yeah.
Now, teams start celebrating activity instead of actual movement. Probably because they're setting their daily goals. This is what we need to get done today. This is the tasks I need to get done, and you should celebrate those, right? Because you're getting things done, and that is actually a great feeling. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the deals are progressing to the next stage.
Yeah.
So busyness delays hard conversations about what's actually stuck. So people need to stop thinking about being busy with all these activities, thinking that things are happening and progress is continuing, and they need to actually start having those conversations with the prospects and getting through those deals on the pipeline. So being busy feels productive, but busy doesn't always pay the bills.
Yeah. And being busy all the time is great when you're generating money, but if you're not generating money from it, you're just going to burn yourself out.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, I've been in that position myself, Chloe, where you think that this account is in the bag and this deal is already over the line before it's actually over the line. And even if you actually close the deal, you've already changed the status to close one and you're all celebrating fine and dandy. The client still has that kind of buyer's remorse in a lot of cases if they're not fully bought into the deal. And then the money doesn't land in the bank and the deal kind of goes sour. So the status needs to change back again. So we just need to make sure that the progress is being made, the payments are being made, and that we're celebrating at the right times.
Yeah, not celebrating too early.
That's right.
So interest sounds like, this looks great, or we're keen. Let us just review this internally. That's interest, but that's not actually closing the deal. Movement when closing a deal, looks like clear decision makers identified, there's agreed timelines, there's defined next steps, there's a path to a yes or no, or they've already made that yes or no decision. And that interest is emotional. They want the outcomes, they want what you can provide, but movement is structural. So that's what's actually going to move the needle and generate you more revenue.
100%. And stalled deals can distort the forecasts and decisions as well. So when deals sit in the pipeline longer than they should, That distorts the facts of what's happening right now, and in terms of the forecasts and decisions that need to get made. Forecasts then become hopeful instead of accurate. And teams can generally rely on deals that feel warm but haven't progressed, you know. Um, and the thing is, that can lead to leaders making growth decisions based on optimism rather than certainty. So if a deal hasn't moved stages, it's no progressing, it's just aging.
Yeah. So a full pipeline doesn't mean buyers are actually moving forward. It just means that they haven't said no yet. And there's a barrier that that client probably has to get into for them to say yes.
So if activity isn't the issue, the next question is, what's actually happening when buyers go quiet?
Good question. So silence usually means that there's internal uncertainty about risk, fear of making the wrong decision, confusion about the next steps, and their competing priorities taking over.
I mean, silence itself is really rejection. It's normally hesitation,
Yeah.
you know. And I know that, with the buyers that I speak to on a daily basis, um, risk and uncertainty is a big thing that they
Yeah.
need to consider, because a lot of the time, because we build revenue systems, we have our own systems. So there's a risk to them of the unknown, if you like. Is this going to work? That it's uncertain if it's going to work. But one of the things that, I always say, that we know that our system works, so you need to, buckle up and move forward.
Yeah. I think with us as well, with leads that come through, there's that risk of not spending any money and investing any money into their business growth to then coming and speaking to us and, having to invest that money and thinking, oh, is it going to work? Is it not? And we're not a marketing agency. We're, a revenue-led growth partner. So when people come to us and they've already been to a marketing agency and they say, "Oh, we've done this before, I don't want to do it." There is that risk of, am I just going to waste money here again? Because they've wasted money with somebody who didn't know what they were actually doing.
Well, the thing is, I mean, a lot of marketing agencies, when they're doing like campaigns in isolation, like a bit of SEO and a bit of paid ads, let's do a little lead generation and this, that, next thing. There's no strategy or cohesion there, and that's the biggest problem that we see, where there are some of the clients who come to us are actually already investing in their growth, thinking that they're going to grow exponentially and get a good ROI from the investments that they're making, but they're not getting those. They're not getting back the ROI that they're expecting, because things are done in a fragmented way. You have an SEO company doing the SEO, you've got a web agency doing the website, and nothing's talking to each other. The CRMs and Pipedrive, HubSpot, everything's all over the place. So there's no single source of truth. Everything's spread all over the place, that they don't actually know what's working, what's not, and how much ROI they're getting back for their spend. And if you look at the clients that come and work with us and we put them on our systems, some of these clients are going from, 500,000 to 3 million in 12 months, just by running with our systems. So we know our system works, and that's because everything is bundled into a single revenue system, um, to ensure that revenue is actually driven.
Yeah. And there's some key truths, if your prospect is silent, it doesn't mean that they're not interested. Just means that there is that barrier for them, that bit of hesitation or risk, or there's something that they're like, oh, they're on the fence about.
The thing is, if you look at some of the clients that we work with, we're working with clients from about 6,000 a month upwards of 65,000 a month plus. Now, depending obviously what they're looking for, how quick they want campaigns to be done, how quick they want ROI, etc., and how much involvement that we need to be there, and what assets need to be created will really depend on what that cost is. But if you've got someone that's maybe only paying for ads monthly, maybe paying an agency 5 grand a month, and then we're saying, well, you need to pay 15 grand a month, there's always going to be hesitation there, because they're going to wonder what they're getting. And not everybody understands what a revenue system is. because we're creating it. So that it's not so much when the silence, which is what we get most of the time, but we're selling a system that people don't yet understand. They don't understand why they need it. They need educated into why they need it,
Yeah.
and that takes time. And a lot of clients will then go back to the comfort zone of, I'll just get a marketing agency because they can do the things that they already know, like the tactical things, like you'll get SEO and you'll get funnels. And funnels are something that are really a thing of the past, but I'm still getting clients asking us about funnels. Now sure, there's a process and a buyer's journey that your clients go through, your prospects go through, but I'm can pretty much guarantee you that it's not going to be as linear as what they think it is. They don't go from awareness to, there's a whole
It's a
life cycle.
flywheel, yeah.
A whole life cycle that they need to go through before they even get to that point where they're ready to talk numbers.
Yeah. One of the other truths is that buyers rarely want more information. It's more about, they want that reassurance that they're making a safe decision. That, this, if it's working with us, that this decision is going to give them an ROI. And poor follow-ups increase pressure instead of clarity. If you're messaging your prospects saying, hey, just following up, like, what's happening, that's gonna pressure them and feel like, oh, like, why is there such a rush to get me over the line, kind of thing.
That's right. And when buyers go quiet, it's usually because they don't feel confident moving forward. And it's generally not because they've lost interest. It's just because that they don't feel like they're making that safe decision, and probably need to understand more about what it is that they're actually buying into. Especially if it's a long-term partnership they're looking for.
Yeah. And like I said, the just checking in adds that pressure without adding any value. You've got vague follow-ups force the buyers to do the thinking instead of them, just saying yes or no. They have to think into everything. And the repeated nudges just highlight the uncertainty instead of resolving it. So,
Exactly.
in a moment, we'll break down the specific mistake that traps deals in maybe, even when the interest is high.
Yeah. So let's pause for a second. So if this is sounding familiar, it's because most stalled deals fail for the same reason. Not lack of effort, but lack of clarity.
Yeah.
Now let's look at where things usually go wrong.
So, the moment that most sales cycles actually break is where sellers unintentionally hand control away. So, they're leaving next steps open ended rather than giving a clear structure of this happens, the next steps are this. You know, you're asking buyers what they want to do next rather than taking control and saying, this is what happens next. And you're waiting for internal updates instead of guiding the process and guiding them through that customer journey, that customer experience.
100%. And when you don't lead the process, buyers default to delay.
Yeah.
That's exactly what happens.
Yeah.
So why being helpful can slow decisions. The first one is, over explaining instead of clarifying. I've been known to do that as well myself sometimes, especially because I come from a technical kind of background. I like to make sure people know exactly what's happening,
Yeah.
and sometimes that's not the best thing to do.
But that happens when you're passionate about
Oh,
what you
100%.
do. It's a natural
100%.
response.
That's right, 100%. Adding additional options instead of direction happens all the time as well. If you're not wanting to do that, then you can do this, rather than saying, listen, this is what you need to do, and this is why.
Yeah. And that just makes them confused when they have too many options. I think
100%.
on the websites, the 3-tier options are usually the go-to.
The go-to, yeah.
Yeah.
And trying to please instead of lead. This is something that's in my personal opinion, that's probably down to lack of confidence. They might not like that, so let's offer this instead. That kind of thing. So helpfulness without leadership creates confusion. So if you don't get the decision, the buyer has to, and that's when the deal is installed.
Yeah. And the unclear next steps creates that hesitation. So buyers don't actually know what's going to happen next. The internal team lacks direction and the decisions get deprioritized. Everything just gets a little bit confusing for, your prospect.
That's right. The deals just slow down and just stall
Yeah.
until you get over that hurdle.
Yeah. So if you're listening to the podcast, I want you to think, are you leading the process or are you waiting for permission to close? It's a very powerful question.
100%. Now let's talk about why discounting and chasing backfires, and that's usually because it signals uncertainty. So when you drop your price, buyers don't think great deal. They think, what just changed? If you were offering something at 30 grand and now you're offering something at 10 grand, is it the same thing that I'm getting? Has value been removed? What is it? Are you just trying to? And you know what? I've done this before myself as well, where I go in and I listen to what the customers are saying, and then I offer our top line, which is what it sounds like they need, and then they fall off their chair. I see them fall off their chair quite literally, and then I'll go back and say, well, here are additional options with X, Y, and Z removed, and maybe you can do that at a later date. And by the way, it's for us to do this, it's 10 grand, rather than and that can be confusion as well. So the best thing to do is actually negotiate with not so much the price, but negotiate with the prospect as to what try and listen to them intently and
Yeah.
understand exactly what it is that they're looking for, and ask them about budget as well.
I think that's the first question you do need to ask, depending on what industry you're in. But if when we're in our industry, we have to ensure that we understand our budget before we can go and say, you need to do this, 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 this. Because while they do need to do this, 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 they might not have the budget to do all that. So if they only have a 10 grand budget, then you can only do 10 grand worth of work in that budget rather than 30 grand.
That's right. That's right. And the thing is, when you're dropping your price and things, it can trigger doubt. Did we overvalue this? Is there something wrong with it that we missed? And would this have been discounted anyway? We personally are not a discount company. What we will do is we will offer you a different option,
Yeah.
which will suit your pricing range. And you need to be realistic with pricing. Just because you're paying 5 grand a month to an advertising agency, and then you come to us and we're building you a revenue system that's going to, quadruple your sales and revenue over the next 12 months. You can't compare that to your advertising agency, and you need to be realistic in what the expectations are. So, and B2B, doubt slows everything down.
Yeah.
So instead of creating urgency, discounting introduces uncertainty. It compromises confidence, both in the offer and in the seller. So
Yeah.
discounting doesn't speed the decisions at all. It makes buyers second guess them.
Yeah. And urgency feels risky to buyers, especially when you're in the B2B, because most B2B tends to be, high ticket items or, it's at a larger scale for B2B rather than B2C. So while that urgency sounds helpful on the surface, to the buyer, it actually feels very risky. When timelines are forced, perceived risk goes up. So they think, why the rush? What happens if we get this wrong? Why aren't we being given time to actually think through this? And the pressure shifts the buyer's focus. So instead of thinking about value, outcomes, or growth, they switch to self-protection mode. And in that self-protection mode, people don't move forward. They slow down, they delay, and they avoid regret. Pressure makes buyers protect themselves, but not move faster. We need to remember that. It does not make people move faster. It just makes them put a shield up and protect themselves.
That's right. I mean, pressure just increases hesitation, and that usually looks like what pressure usually looks like is things like more follow-ups. How many times you following up, and how those follow-ups are actually worded as well can make a massive difference.
Yeah.
More just checking in messages, and more urgency without clarity. Trying to move the deal as quickly as you can through the tunnel. I mean, the thing is, when a client is I mean, you can follow up. I mean, I follow up with our clients our prospects every day, and there's some things I don't hear from any of them. And then, at the end of our follow up process, there's a goodbye message. This will be the last follow up that we send. Um,
The
and
ball's
you
in
don't
your
hear
court.
you don't hear anything for a month or two, and then boom, they're back in the game. They're back in stage one, as a lead. So it's not about chasing urgency. It's not about more urgency. It's about more clarity, really. So why does the pressure usually backfires? More follow-ups negates more certainty. Aggression triggers defensiveness, so people tend to get defensive, especially if the follow-ups are quite aggressive. You've got 3 days, or this offer's going away, or whatever. To me,
Yeah.
that's aggressive. Buyers tend to shift into that self-protection mode that you were talking about. What actually works is calm leadership, a clear direction, and fewer, more intentional touch points. So, you didn't need to be doing 20 follow ups, just do 3 follow ups. Keep it nice, conversational, add value where you can, and just don't pressure them, because pressure makes buyers pull back and leadership invites them forward.
Yeah. And the thing, for the listeners, if you're in the B2B space, B2B compared to B2C, B2C sales cycle is a lot shorter because it's low value items. It's, items that people can buy and they won't second guess it, or they'll just be like, oh, it was only $50. In B2B, you're talking about high ticket items or big business decisions that usually have to speak to stakeholders or multiple people in the business or, whatever it may be. So these are naturally just longer sales cycles.
That's right. So the thing is, if this discount worked, it would shorten the sales cycle, not stretch them.
Yeah. So how high performing sellers create that momentum? So what they do differently is they control the process without dominating it. They set expectations early on in the sales cycle and they frame decisions clearly. They also guide the buyers calmly through that sales cycle. So you want to set clear decision frameworks, define what a decision actually looks like, clarify who needs to be involved in those decisions, and set timelines without giving any pressure to them, without feeling like, they need to make this decision in X amount of days.
That's right. And really, you need to lead the conversations calmly and confidently.
Yeah.
What that looks like in practice is, you speak less and you guide more. You ask actually fewer questions, but just make sure they're better ones,
Mm.
which gets the answers that you need. And you let the process do the work. That's why it exists there in the first place.
The thing with people is people love to talk about themselves.
Yep.
If you're asking those detailed questions about somebody and letting them take the lead, on the conversation and what they feel like they need, or depending on what industry you're in, obviously, then they're going to feel like, you know, heard, seen, understood by you when you say, hey, this is actually what you need, in your life or in your business.
That's right. And the thing is, you can use silence intentionally as well, where you can pause instead of trying to fill the space with just noise. You can let buyers process and respond what you've actually just said, especially if you've got a Scottish accent. And that always helps. And silence signals confidence as well, not awkwardness. Especially when you reveal the price or the starting price. And in a lot of cases, you should state the price and be confident about stating the price. That's the price. That's where it starts. And then just let that sink in. Let them process it, because they'll be probably gauging it against what they're already paying.
Yeah.
So where you want to place your focus is certainty over persuasion, direction over explanation, and leadership over approval. Because confidence is loud, it's calm.
Yeah. Buyers move faster when they feel guided, not pushed. They don't feel like pressured to, buy from you.
100%. Now, How you can shorten your sales cycle ethically, there's a few practical shifts you can make. The first one is defining the next steps early and clearly. Remove ambiguity from the proposals and address risk before value. Slow down strategically to speed up the decisions. Speed comes from clarity, not pressure, and that will always win.
Yeah. And the way you speak in general as a person also affects, like you mentioned earlier, affects how they perceive you. So, if you're saying, um, uh, you're going to look like you actually don't even know what you're talking about. And when we first started the podcast, especially, we were really bad for that and not having that awkward silence. But it's not awkward because, it's confident. So there's some actionable takeaways I want you guys to implement this week. I want you to identify where your deals usually stall and fix it. I want you to audit your follow-up language. I want you to remove unnecessary urgency. Lead the process intentionally and focus on certainty, not speed. After this episode, look at the one deal that's been dragging and ask yourself, what uncertainty haven't I addressed yet?
So sales cycles don't shorten when you push harder. They shorten when buyers feel safe about moving forward. So if you haven't already, subscribe to the Adonis Effect podcast. Share this episode with someone stuck in the sales cycle and apply one clarity-driven change this week that will help you drive your sales forward.
If you found this podcast valuable, make sure you leave a like and a comment down below as well. And let us know the actual takeaway that you implemented this week. Next week on the Adonis Effect, we're breaking down the EEAT framework. This is experience, expertise, authority, and trust, and why it's now the real driver of visibility, credibility, and conversions online. We'll unpack how Google actually elevates trust, why content alone isn't enough anymore, and how to build authority that attracts the right customers without gaming the algorithm. We'll see you next week, guys. Thanks for...
Cheers, guys. Bye.
Bye. Thanks.